Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here and welcome to Final Fantasy Bestiary. This series is dedicated towards discovering the history and lore behind Final Fantasy's most iconic creatures and characters. This episode, we continue our look into the 3 new jobs coming to 14 by taking a look at the Machinist. The Machinist is a job focused around the use of gadgets and machines to support and deal damage. Over the years, this job has shared names with a number of other Final Fantasy jobs and classes, most popular of the bunch being the Engineer. Some other common names include the Gadgeteer, the Tinkerer, and the Chief, according to the wiki. Each game's interpretation of the Machinist's abilities changes as much as its title does. Though the name Machinist is known mostly from Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy IV introduced Cid as an Engineer and even as a Chief in the earlier versions of the game. His choice of weapon is a hammer, and he mostly just uses his machines to display an enemy's stats such as HP and MP. In the 3D version of the game, he also had the ability to modify his weapon's elemental properties by sacrificing items. This role continued onto the other Final Fantasy IV games, though him and his apprentice Luca had slightly different attacks in the after years. In Final Fantasy VI, one of the protagonists, Edgar, is also a machinist. Using his special ability tools, he is able to perform a variety of attacks, my favorite being the chainsaw, which inflicts high physical damage to a single opponent and has a chance of inflicting death. His choice of weapon is the spear, with the Longinus being his ultimate weapon. Fast forward several years to the release of Final Fantasy XI. Now, none of the jobs I mentioned at the start for Machinist were present here. Instead, Final Fantasy XI's interpretation of the Machinist is the Puppet Master. This job was a moderately powerful hand-to-hand fighter, but it relied heavily on the control of a pet automaton to do their work for them. Capable of tanking, healing, and doing DPS, the Puppet Master makes use of several maneuvers to influence his puppet's decisions in battle. However, overuse of these maneuvers can lead to a malfunction with the automaton, causing it to overheat and greatly diminishing its efficiency. This effect made equipment that reduced the chances of overheating extremely valuable, with their mythic weapon almost making overheating impossible. Final Fantasy XII also brought in the Machinist job when the International Zodiac Job Edition came out. It used the gun as its main weapon and had the ability to learn a number of supportive moves such as time magic. Outside of its use of measures and I guess the gun, the job didn't really make too much use of its actual title, with the only real machine it uses being the gun, if that even counts. I suppose it's implied that it maybe uses machines to cast its time magics? I'm not sure, but it was still featured as a job in the game. And of course, that brings us to Final Fantasy XIV, where the Machinist is going to be brought to the game in its first expansion, Heavensward. This incarnation of the job primarily draws inspiration from the Final Fantasy Tactics titles, where the Machinist, Tinkerer, and Gadgeteer were all present across the series. Using a multitude of attachments, they are able to enhance their gun to have different effects. They also have supportive mechanical turrets that will have a multitude of effects to grant to nearby party members. This interpretation of the Machinist may actually be the version that has the most actual involvement with machines in the Final Fantasy series, unless you count Pandora's Box. Now obviously the main titled series isn't the only place the Machinist is present. I mentioned Final Fantasy Tactics as a game where the job and its other names are known from. 2 of the most popular Machinists, Mustadio Bonanza and his enemy, Barrack Fencer, come right from the Final Fantasy Tactics game. However, it's safe to say that regardless of the game, this isn't considered one of the staple jobs of the Final Fantasy series. That made some players of Final Fantasy XIV upset to see it chosen over some of the other mainstay jobs of the series, such as Red and Blue Mages. However, with more information surfacing on how the job will operate, many players are now looking forward to the change from the standard Final Fantasy jobs. Hopefully, when we talk about Astrologian next week, you'll enjoy it a little bit more too. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and check out the rest of my Bestiary series on my channel. Be sure to tune in next week where we talk about the Astrologian, and I'll see you guys then. Until then, take care.